Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am your co host, Jocelyn Turner. It's such a pleasure to have you all join us tonight. Tonight is going to be a very interesting discussion, one that is very important and probably not a conversation we have amongst ourselves often, although very important. I think, Dr. Kane, that we talk about when it comes to food choices, we talk about what we want to have for dinner or what we ate yesterday or where we're going to go for the weekend. But we don't always associate it with one's risk of developing colon cancer and or any other cancer, and of course for those persons who might be struggling with being overweight and or obese. So that's what our topic is tonight. The link between colon cancer, obesity, and food choices. I would first like to start by welcoming my co-host, Dr. Rogers Kane. How are you doing this evening, Dr. Kane?
Absolutely wonderful. It was such a nice day. I
You
got
stole
caught.
my thunder.
Yeah, I got caught off guard with when I walked out and had to turn around and go get a coat because I walked out with just these on, and I had to turn around and go get a coat. But I loved this kind of weather. Love
Yes, so do I. It was beautiful. Although, we talked last week. What's our favorite time of the year or season of the year? If it's spring, whatever. And I love fall, but I get so over winter that I look forward to spring too. Now the summer and winter when it gets really the extreme temperatures, right? But enough about me. We have two special guests joining us tonight. I'm going to start with our repeat guest. Obviously, we love what she's saying because we've had her on a ton of times, and that is our favorite registered and licensed dietitian, Miss Linda Lockett Brown. How are you doing this evening, Linda?
Doing good. Glad to be here. This is one of my favorite topics.
Is it really? Yeah. And I'm expecting that we're going to learn a lot tonight. So, welcome and thank you again for joining us. Also, joining us tonight, I actually just met her, as you all are, audience, those of you who don't know her, and hopefully someone who has not a very common first name. I will not botch up her first name, but Dr. Shanique Wilson. How are you doing this evening?
I'm well and very well pronounced. Thank you.
Listen, I learned my phonics and all those other good things that my elementary teachers taught me. So thank you and welcome. Such a pleasure to have you with us this evening. Dr. Wilson, this is a really interesting subject. It's colon cancer awareness month, and not everybody pays attention to that kind of stuff, but as someone who I'm a health educator with public health background, we always made sure that we educated people based on the national health observances. Not only is it colon cancer awareness month, Linda, as you know, it's National Nutrition Month. So another favorite topic of mine, one day I'm going to master food enough that I won't struggle with my addiction for it. And yes, it seems to be an addiction for me, Linda. I like how you laugh because it is my addiction. Everybody has something, and food is mine. So, Dr. Wilson, tell me what is. I mean, let's just put it out there. What is the association, if you will, between or the link between colon cancer and obesity. But before I do that, I'd like for you to, since you are new to our audience, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Of course. So I'm Dr. Shanique Wilson. I am actually new to the Jacksonville area. Recently started in private practice at Borland Gruber, the Memorial Office. Still accepting new patients. So I'm initially from South Florida by way of Jamaica. So I grew up in a very Jamaican household. So in Jamaica we love to cook, and our diet is not necessarily the healthiest. I did a lot of my training at Florida State University for undergrad and med school, and then went on to the University of Miami Jackson Memorial for residency, and then Mount Sinai West Campus in the New York City for fellowship before moving back, to Florida and ultimately making Jacksonville my home. Um, Disclaimer: Jacksonville is probably the nicest and most friendliest place I've ever lived. So I'm really excited to kind of help the community.
Wow, well, welcome. As a native of Jacksonville, I love hearing when someone says something nice about us. So welcome and thank you. Welcome to Northeast Florida. I tell people we're the part of Florida that actually has seasons, whereas
Yes.
some parts of Florida they really don't. So again, welcome. So now let's really delve into this topic because it's a serious topic, Dr. Wilson. All of us go in for the dreaded colonoscopy, and I call it the dreaded colonoscopy. But it is a good sleep, if nothing else, right? It's just that darn preparation for it. So let's talk about, really. I think we probably want to start, Dr. Kane, with talking a little bit about colon cancer. What do you think in terms of maybe most impacted?
Yeah, let's go ahead and deal with colon cancer. That's the thunder for Dr. Wilson. If she wants to give us any statistics or as it relates to patients being screened, those not screened, the rate of metastasis or whatever, as it relates to when you do not detect it in time. What may be the outcome, stuff along that line for people who are not that familiar with the statistics. Doesn't have to be too detailish, but enough to get people attention and make them understand that. And I steal this one line from the third most documented cancer in the United States. I think it's the third. And I don't think has it reached second place yet, or we still third.
Well, if you're under the age of 50, it's actually the leading cause of cancer for men. And it's also the second leading cause of cancer for women under the age of 50, only followed by breast cancer or following breast cancer. So, and these are new statistics. This is as of like this year, because historically it has not been the case.
Right.
But colon cancer is on the rise. And we think a lot of it has to do with our lifestyles, the rise in obesity, the smoking, the poor diets, ultra processed foods. So there's definitely an association there. But I guess I can start with kind of like what is colon cancer. And the way I explain it to my patients is if you're living in the West, it's a completely preventable disease. There's no reason that any person living in Western civilization should have colon cancer, because we know what the risk factors are. We know who to screen early, and we know that early detection saves lives. We know that when the colon cancer is small, there are endoscopic therapies that are available to patients where they don't even need to get a cut on the belly, and we'd be able to take out the tumor as a whole. We know that if it's a little bit bigger, surgery is an option. We know that chemotherapy and radiation and surgery can work. But we also know that the later you are in diagnosis, the higher your likelihood of dying from the disease. And if it's stage 4 at diagnosis, your 5-year mortality is almost certainly you're not going to be here. So there's literally no reason why in the West somebody is being diagnosed late, because we have an abundance of resources.
Let's make sure people understand that when we say endoscopic, what she basically is saying is the colonoscopy, taking a look with a camera in various body parts, but when we use the general term endoscopic. That's for those listeners that are not medically trained.
For sure.
But that is what Dr. Wilson is referencing.
So, Dr. Wilson and Linda, you can chime in as well, because one of the things that I look, when you hear the statistics of younger people being diagnosed with colon cancer, I'm not putting any, I'm not going to name a chain or a place, but I know that oftentimes, Linda, you're laughing because most folks younger than me grew up on fast food, right? And is there association between the fast food, the enormous amount of fast food and high fat food and all that other stuff that people tend to eat and the likelihood of developing colon cancer? And both of you are, can delve into that.
That's absolutely the case. And I'll just tell you, I've been fully expecting for the colon cancer rate to go up since we started adding folate to the food supply to prevent spina bifida. Adding folate to the food supply actually can drive a cell in the colon to become malignant. So, and that just about the same time we put folate in the food supply, the age for the first colonoscopy was dropped from down to, I think it's 45 to have your first colonoscopy. So I thought, okay, well, at least there's some recognition that adding folate to the food supply is going to increase the rate. Having said that, when you think about what to eat and the effect of food on colon cancer, there's two ways to look at it. One is, what do you need to eat more of that can protect you, and what do you need to eat less of because it's harmful? So I have patients that if I say, you need to cook from scratch, they're looking at me like I just landed from Mars. Cook with where you put your own ingredients in the food, because we had a whole podcast on ultra processed foods. So you're absolutely right that having generations, and it's probably 3 generations at this point, grow up on fast food or highly processed foods and low intake of whole grains, fruits, and vegetables, they're just being set up for development of the disease. And I love what Dr. Wilson said, that it's totally preventable. I completely agree. It is totally preventable.
I have friends who've decided, Linda and Dr. Wilson, to grow their own foods because they feel that that's the better way. But, to me, and I shared this statement with someone years ago, and Dr. Kane, Linda has dropped several nuggets with us, and I'll interject those nuggets every now and then. But I tell people intellectually, when I know what I should and shouldn't eat. However, Dr. Wilson, when you talked about us friendly folks here in Northeast Florida, I can tell you us friendly folks in Northeast Florida like to eat, right? That good old Southern food. So when I go in the grocery store, intellectually, I know that I need to stay on the perimeter of the store because that's where I will get the better food options. However, my cultural background and my Southern upbringing steers me, it pulls me like a magnet, Dr. Wilson, to those inner aisles, which makes me choose those foods that are not healthy. So I say to both of you, how do we get people to change when we're seeing those commercials? And I didn't know that this was true, but when I noticed years ago when I started driving down a road near my house, I'm smelling the fried chicken, right? And that's because I heard that they actually have fans that push the aroma of that stuff out. But Dr. Wilson, you want me to go, instead of stopping by one of those fabulous places, you actually want me to go and pick some stuff from my garden, Linda? I mean, really?
What I actually want you to do is on Saturday, when you are relaxing, I want you to plan your meals for the whole week. And if you run around like a crazy person, like I do, probably Dr. Wilson does too, if you plan what you're going to eat, you can do pre-prep on Saturday and then during the week, it doesn't take you an hour to fix a meal. So planning is key. The other issue in this area is the cost of food. The cost of food. When I go to the grocery store, I'm having sticker shock. I'm having sticker shock. And so, when I go, I make a Publix fruit run. I love to get fruit from Publix. And I'm just really glad that the kids are grown and gone, because if I had to feed them, it would be a lot more expensive. So that's a real issue. And so I was thinking about that. How do you do it more cost effectively? And really, it still comes back to cooking your own food.
I completely agree. I'd say every patient is different. So when I have this conversation with patients, I always try to figure out what their motivations are. There's some people, they're like, convenience is everything. Other people, they're truly addicted to sugar. And you can't really divorce them from these things. So just kind of figuring out what type of person you are. Like, am I really addicted to fatty foods? So I love salty foods, and try to figure out a way around that addiction. So for instance, I had, a patient this week who said, doc, like, I am a busy mom. I don't have time to make anything. So I eat one meal a day, and I try to shove all those calories into that one meal.
Oh,
wow.
What am I supposed to do with that? And my answer to her was just like, okay, well, if you're only eating one time a day and you must feel full, then you need to have nutrient dense, high fiber foods that have like bulk to it, things that are going to fill up your stomach to make you feel full, that full 24 hours until you eat again, but that are not going to put so many calories in you that you're eating 3, 4, 5,000 in one sitting. So really understanding who you are as a person is kind of going to help you there. And I mean, the real importance of this is that, as much as people don't like to say calories in, calories out, I always tell patients, like, I can't meet you at your delusion, like, we have to acknowledge that calories exist, and like, things don't just get made up by the body. Like, the laws of thermodynamics exist. So if there's an issue with weight loss or an issue with fat loss, it's 100% related to like what you're consuming and how much you're burning, full stop. So if you're a sugar addict like me, I always say, okay, well, if you're a sugar addict, you need to have things that are sugary at home that will satisfy the craving, but won't be unhealthy. So always have apples, cantaloupes, pineapples, whatever sugar you want and love, have it available, because you're going to get the fiber from those natural sugars. You're going to get that sweetness that you need. And as long as they're as easily, if not more easily accessible than the unhealthy stuff, you'll eat those things first. And to Linda's point about meal prepping, I'm a huge fan of meal prepping, but not necessarily meal prepping, because sometimes you get tired of the meals that you make when you meal prep, or you end up on Wednesday, you don't want the thing you initially planned for. But I would say always have a bunch of sides ready, and then one meat that's ready to go. So if you can season up your chicken, put it in the freezer, season up your meat or whatever, put it in the freezer, and then know that all I have to do is cook that one thing, and then I just warm up the sides. You can save a ton of time and then be able to eat really like whatever you want.
Especially if the fried chicken is not grown in the garden, Jocelyn Colonel.
But listen, I told you I was going to drop the Linda nuggets. As Linda said, when I asked her about reading labels a few months ago, I just wanted to drop out the chair when she said you don't have to read labels on the stuff you should eat.
Well,
Like,
I got a new one. Meet you at your delusion.
Right. If you just joined us, we're talking about the link between colon cancer, obesity, and food choices with Dr. Shanique Wilson and Linda Lockett Brown. Dr. Wilson, tell me about who's most at risk of developing colon cancer. You talked about that the number of persons who are being diagnosed, unfortunately, are younger than 50. But who's most at risk?
So unfortunately, like a lot of things in medicine, it's us. Okay, it's Black people, and I'm talking Black people across the diaspora. So African American people from here. I'm talking the Caribbean. I'm talking people from Africa that are recently immigrated. We are the most at risk because we are not being screened appropriately. So, number one, the age of 45, which is the new thing as of the last 2 years, it's 45 for everybody. But it's been 45 for us for over a decade,
Exactly.
right? So, when you have, patients, there's patients that have come to me that said, "Oh, I asked my doctor about this 5 years ago. They're 40, 50 now. I asked my doctor about this 5 years ago. They said that the age was 50. It was not 50 for us. It was 45 for us, all the way back then, but people weren't being sent in. People weren't being screened. And insurances were giving people a hard time for the doctors who were screening their patients. And the issue with that is that it just so happens that when we get diagnosed with colon cancer, we tend to get diagnosed at a later stage where we have less options and we're most likely to die, when we pursue those options, which is why getting screened early is so important, but also knowing when to not get screened, but when to go looking for cancer early is important. Like it is never normal to have rectal bleeding, not once. It's never normal to have rectal bleeding at all. If there's blood coming out, I would say err on the side of just going and checking, even if it might be hemorrhoids, even if you feel the hemorrhoids, just go get checked for peace of mind.
Dr. Wilson, you raised a point as a family practitioner, being the guy on the front line, trying to get them to you guys. And I can say it on air now. I don't care. I used to find any early, and I said, "Have you ever had rectal bleeding?" They said they might start going, "Well, a couple of years stop." I don't want to hear anything else. Good enough. And I would send them to get screened because I knew that was a necessity for us, especially given the high amount of fat and stuff that we had in our diet. The slave trade gave us this cultural diet that we are participatory in, and that we're trying to break the links from our ancestors as it relates to the high fat diet, especially, even though it's so good. We're still
and the thing is, we tend to go with all or nothing thinking. So if I were to say to someone, never eat fried chicken ever in your life, that is not going to happen. Right. But the reality of the human body is, if eating fried chicken is an occasional thing, your body can actually handle it.
Yeah,
but absolutely. If it's every other day, I've, not my family members, but my husband's family members, had a, what do they call them? A fry baby, fry daddy, fry something. It's this thing you keep on your counter, and there's grease in there. And so every day they would come home and they would fry chicken one day and fry pork chops the other day. And that's just what they did. Your body can't handle that, but it can handle occasionally. Your body can do that. And so the other thing is, I have clients say to me, "Well, I didn't grow up eating that." I'll say, "Okay, so tell me what your parents died from." And then I listen. "Okay, what did your aunts and uncles die from? What did your cousins die from?" And in most instances, if they're in to see me, one or more of them died from something that was related to eating too much fat, not enough fiber, not enough fruits and vegetables. So I can use that, like Dr. Wilson, to find something that they can relate to that makes it more important to them. And so the other thing that I've been telling people lately is, if you alter a recipe so that it has less fat, less sodium, don't make the mistake of expecting that recipe to taste like what your mother fixed for you when you grew up. it is not going to taste the same. It cannot taste the same because the taste buds, if the fat is gone, then the taste buds can't pick that up. But it doesn't mean that the flavor of that altered thing is not good. The flavor it's just different. It's not going to be like what you grew up on. I had some folks come to my house and they actually brought their fryer with them because they knew the nutritionist was not going to go there. And I had everything ready so that they could just sit down and eat. And people were eating things that they had never eaten before. And I was laughing because they kept saying, "Oh, this tastes good." Right. So lots of herbs and spices, broiled fish with herbs and lemon, and we had lots of food. We even had collard greens. We had the Linda Brown version of collard greens that were not high fat. So it can be done, but it is a challenge. And I go back to the food prices. It is a challenge.
Wait a minute, Fry Baby. I mean, we just had these Crisco cans, is what we had. You had your fish grease and your chicken grease, and then whatever else. But fresh Crisco. Fry Baby, that's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah,
Oh, where you
it's
been, Dr. King?
It's an
Not
appliance.
in North Florida, I guess. But
Yeah, it truly. But nowadays, though, Linda, in fairness to people, they're using the air fryer. I don't hear people talk about the fry baby or fry daddy as they used to.
Good.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the link between colon cancer, obesity, obesity and food choices. So, Dr. Wilson, now let's talk a little bit about, we talked about who's at risk, unfortunately, of colon cancer, African Americans, or just Black people, because it could be Black people from Africa or the Caribbean or whatever. But what about folks who are obese? Because that is also a risk factor, I think, in our community for so many. Somebody said they missed their fry daddy. I'm sorry. Just get your air fryer, baby. You'll be all right. But Dr. Wilson, let's talk about obesity. Is obesity a risk factor also for colon cancer? I know it is for so many other diseases. Just hit us with the bad news, Dr. Wilson.
So obesity is a risk factor for colon cancer, as for basically almost every cancer, if we're being honest. Fat cells are hormonally active. They're putting your body at a state of inflammation constantly. And a lot of times we kind of make the differentiation between some of these fat cells. You have the fat cells that hug your organs, the visceral fat. That's the worst kind of fat you can have, the fat that sits around your organs, kind of covers your heart, your liver, your intestines, and all it does is just secrete hormones that has you at like a constant state of inflammation. And why that's important is because your body wants to get rid of like bad cells. Your body over time, kind of like as you're sleeping and you're living a healthy lifestyle, your body gets rid of the cells that are no longer serving you. But if you're in a constant state of inflammation, your body's not going to be able to work as efficiently to get rid of cancer cells. And all it takes is one cell to transform to a cell that does not turn off. And that's kind of it for you. And unfortunately, like obesity, because the fat cells are so hormonally active, you can't really control what those hormones are going to do to you. So in some patients, it gives them, let's say, infertility. In other patients, it gives them polycystic ovarian syndrome. In other patients, uterine cancer. In some patients, colon cancer. And you can't predict how it's going to affect you. So it's just best to not have to go through it, really.
We don't know which direction it may mutate in terms of its effect on the rest of your body. One other thing I just wanted to point out, since you guys mentioned it earlier, is about folic acid. The amount of folic acid, since we mentioned it, I think, and I'll stand to be corrected about either one of you ladies, anything more than 1,000 milligrams is probably too much folic acid. And these days, I run into a whole lot of people who are using these super vitamins and multivitamins. And even though it may say 1 milligram of folic acid in this guy, maybe 500 milligrams of folic acid in another guy, by the time you get through add all these vitamin supplemental formulas, you may wind up with more than 1,000 milligrams of folic acid. And I like, because Linda is always, even though she says if it's labels, if you're reading the labels, maybe you shouldn't be eating it, more or less. And I kind of paraphrase it. I have. If you got to read all the different vitamins and multiple different sources of vitamins, you got to look at all those to combine them to see how much of each vitamin you're taking. Maybe you need to receive your multivitamins instructions under the influence or instructions of your physician, much like when you do subscription or prescription medicine. So just keep that in mind, audience, that sometimes you can take too much of the so-called good supplements because you're taking multiple forms of this.
Yeah, one of the things I do in my practice is I have people bring me their bags of supplements, and I actually put it on a spreadsheet, and I add up the totals from all the different supplements that they're taking. And I've actually had, and so I do that to look at excesses, but then I look at drug nutrient interactions. So I take that and I run a scan on interactions with their medications. And I actually had a client once that his cardiologist kept upping his dosage of certain medications. And then it turns out that the reason why he had to do that was because his supplements were interacting with the active ingredient in the medication. And so that is an issue. The other issue is people feel like I can eat junk and take a supplement and make up for the poor food choices that I'm making. And it doesn't work that way, because the vitamins and minerals, when they're in food, the carrier that you need to get that vitamin or mineral absorbed is also in the food. So often, if you take a supplement, you will absorb some, but it's not going to be at the same rate as if you got that nutrient from food itself. So it's interesting. The people that would be overdosing on things are actually the people that are trying to help themselves. Mm-hmm. It's just they're doing it not based on knowledge.
So one of the things I just read while you all were talking, because we like to do our homework, and this is an interesting statement. It says, we believe that a combination of waist circumference and body mass index measurements is recommended to assess the obesity-related risk of developing colon cancer. What's that all about? I mean, so, back in the day, that old song that talked about being 36, 24, 36, do you think putting that out there, that if people knew that if they should have a smaller waist, that is the goal, and then it'll just, because people are, looking at celebrities or, pay attention to folks. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, that waist circumference is really just a measure of visceral fat that Dr. Wilson was talking about. So it's a way to gauge how much visceral fat you have. And so what I like about that measurement is, and actually, if you come to my office, I will actually have a machine to tell you exactly what percent body fat you have. But doing the waist circumference tells me where the fat is. And that does matter.
Thank you. So we're going to take a little a pause for our History Maker Minute. It'll give our guests an opportunity to drink some water, or just to take a breather. A very interesting discussion. Again, our topic for this evening is colon cancer, obesity, and food choices. Make sure you stay tuned and also share the podcast right now with your friends or folks you know who need to listen in. But if you would, stay tuned now for our History Maker moment. Take it away, Tyrone.
Welcome to Pause for Truth's History Makers Minute. Today, on March 19th, 2024, we honor Black excellence in medicine. Join us as we spotlight 5 Black doctors leading the fight against cancer. These inspiring individuals are making history right now. Buckle up, we're meeting some true heroes. The world of cancer research has been significantly shaped by the contributions of African American doctors. 5 such pioneers whose stories we will explore are leading this crucial fight. Now let's dive into the journeys of these remarkable individuals. First up, we have John Carpton, born on a memorable day in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Rising from humble beginnings, Carpton's journey led him to become the esteemed chair of President Biden's National Cancer Advisory Board. His significant contributions to cancer research are truly revolutionary. Carpton's leadership continues to shape the future of cancer research. Next, we meet Dr. Isaac Kanda, born in the vibrant city of Baltimore, Maryland. His journey from humble beginnings to becoming the Vice President of Technology Assessment at Exact Sciences is truly inspirational. His groundbreaking contributions are revolutionizing how we approach cancer research. Dr. Kinda's innovative approach is pushing the boundaries of cancer research. Now, let us introduce you to Tamika Felder, born in the heart of South Carolina. Her journey from a cancer survivor to a women's health advocate has been nothing short of remarkable. She leads with vision at Survivor, her advocacy work pioneering strides in cancer research. Felder's advocacy continues to inspire and drive progress in cancer research. Next in line is Linda Goler Blount, born on a crisp autumn day in Atlanta, Georgia. Her journey from a curious child to the president and CEO of the Black Women's Health Imperative is truly inspiring. Blount's vision is paving the way for a healthier future for Black women. Finally, we present to you Dr. Hadia Nicole Green, born on a warm summer's day in St. Louis, Missouri. Her humble beginnings shaped her into the tenacious woman she is today. Driven by her passion for science and a determination to make a difference, she embarked on a journey that led her to become an interdisciplinary cancer researcher. Today, as the founder of the ORA Lee Smith Cancer Research Foundation, she is leading groundbreaking research that holds great promise. Dr. Green's groundbreaking research is revolutionizing the way we approach cancer treatment. In the fight against cancer, these 5 African-American doctors are leading the charge. Their trailblazing efforts, from leadership to innovation, advocacy to visionary thinking, and groundbreaking research, are making significant strides in cancer research. Their work not only transforms lives but also reshapes the landscape of cancer research for generations to come. Welcome to Pause.
Wow, Tyrone really does a fantastic job with highlighting some notable individuals doing some wonderful things. And in this case, in the area of cancer research, as well as seeing patients with cancer. This evening, again, if you're just joining us, we have Dr. Shanique Wilson. And Dr. Wilson, are you a gastroenterologist?
I am. So I'm a gastroenterologist. I also see patients with liver disease. So that's basically it. Yeah.
And then thank you. And of course, our resident, I'm calling her a resident, registered licensed dietitian with all those other initials behind her name, Linda Lockett Brown. And Linda, by the way, we didn't mention it at the beginning of the show. Linda is in private practice. And Linda, tell our audience a little bit about Sinet. Is that it? Did I say it right? Sinet,
Registered Dietitians and Wellness. We've been in business since actually 1985. And our specialty in one area is actually GI. The GI tract just fascinates me. And I have so many patients that have been, they have conditions or symptoms, and they've just been putting up with it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years and didn't know that they could actually get better. Last year, our practice was accredited to do diabetes self-management education. And 2 weeks ago, we were recognized by the CDC to do diabetes prevention. So that happened since the last time I saw you.
And the
That's
last time
awesome.
we spoke.
And that's awesome, Linda. And the thing that people have to recognize, and I think you've heard that tonight from Dr. Wilson and Linda, is that the lifestyle choices that we make, the foods that we eat, all have an impact on our health outcomes. And if we understand the association between the things that we do and don't do, and not just look at our outwardly body of, we really need to look at our, our inward self, right? But also know our family history. Some of us don't understand or don't even know what our family history is. I always tell people, when you're doing your family tree for your nice little shirts that all the family members wear, do one on a piece of paper or poster and put the diseases that those folks had. And then that way you'll know what your risk of having those diseases. Family, we can't do anything about. Our race, we cannot do anything about. Our gender, we cannot do anything about. But for the things that we can do something about, as you all are shaking your head, are the how active we are in terms of exercise, our weight in terms of what the scale says, the food choices that we have, how we manage our health, the frequency in going to see Dr. Kane and those other family practice physicians to make sure that we're on track with our numbers, knowing our numbers. That's something we didn't talk about. Dr. Wilson, again, I just have to tell you, I don't look forward to going and getting that dreaded colonoscopy, right? Now, how often you go, why does it vary how often someone has to go in for a repeat colonoscopy? Some people say, oh, mine was good, I have to go 10. But some folk, they may have to go 3 or 5 years. What is that? Why does that vary?
Good question.
That's an excellent question. So it really depends on what we found and how good of a look we got. So the hardest part of the colonoscopy is getting cleaned out for it. I always give my patients a goal, like your poop should look like urine when you come to see me that day, because if I don't feel comfortable in what I'm seeing, I'm going to have you come back sooner. Some people that is 6 months, some people that's a year or 2 years, it depends. Now, if I go in, I get a great look, but I find a bunch of polyps, which are precancerous tissues that I have to take out. Depending on how many I find, depending on how big they are when I find them, will determine how soon you have to come back. So for some people, if I find just one small polyp, maybe 7 years. But if I find 2 or 3, that, the more I find, the sooner you're coming back. Because again, I'm human. Every doctor is a human. And I can't be 100% certain that 1, I got everything that you had, and 2, that some of that polyp wasn't left behind. So in terms of the guidelines, we have clear guidelines about when patients should come back, depending on the sizes, depending on how much effort it took to get the polyp out, will determine when you need to come back. And every patient, when they're finished with their colonoscopy, they should know, okay, when should I come back? And that's something that, you should keep in your head. At our practice, we'll always call the patient at that time to say, hey, come on back. But sometimes people move. Sometimes you lose a paper. Sometimes you get a new number. So it really is your own personal responsibility to say, okay, I got one in 2020. They told me to come back in 2023. So I'm going to come back in 2023.
Let me interject real quick. As a primary care provider, I run into that quite often. Run into that same question. I will ask the patient, well, when were you did you get your colonoscopy? They say, yeah, I got it. And sometimes they may be up under my watch, and other times not. And so I may ask them quickly, well, when are you supposed to go back? Oh, they said they didn't find anything. So, and then as a primary care provider, you can make an assumption 10 years because they didn't find anything. But when you actually go back and look at the colonoscopy report, they found 1, 2, 3 polyps. And the physician may say to them at the time, the polyps were benign, but the patient read it as, I'm good, I don't need to be back for 10 years, or I don't need to come back, whatever it may be. And so while I have people's attention, I want to make sure people understand when they say that it was okay, meaning non-cancerous, does not mean for you to have a freedom of 10 years plus of not going back to see that colonoscopist. And if you really want to not have to go through that procedure again in terms of, well, let me, not again, but too soon in terms of cleaning yourself or cleansing yourself for the proper colonoscopy, do it right the first time. take advantage of it. Don't suffer 2 times to go get a good colonoscopic view of what's going on within your colon.
So I've gone to get my colonoscopy. The doctor tells me, or tells the patient, that you have polyps. You need to come back in, 3 to 5 years, whatever the case may be. What should I be doing tomorrow? I'll give the person a break today because they got to ease in eating, because they should have drank that stuff and had to. Thank you, Dr. Wilson, for saying liquid poop, because that's a new one on me. I haven't heard the liquid poop. But so the next day, what am I supposed to be doing different about my diet? Linda already told us, Dr. Wilson. Again, I'm dropping another Lindaism. She told me I'm supposed to eat 2 carrots and drink a bottle of water and go for a walk to make sure that I am having regular poops. But what nuggets can you all drop to our audience now to say, hey, okay, you had a polyp. Here's what you might need to do different in order not to perhaps have another polyp.
Well, I'm going to start with what you need to eat more of. I remember when I was a kid, they called it the basic 4, and you're supposed to eat 4 fruits and vegetables a day. That was wrong, so wrong. It's actually 9. So you should be eating 4 fruits and 5 vegetables every day, not every week, every single day. And so what you want to do is look for the colors. So you want to have some blueberries, some blackberries, some raspberries, have an apple, have a peach, have a pear. So you want to have 4 of those a day. And then you want to have 5 different servings of vegetables. So you want to have a green leafy vegetable. Green beans are okay, but broccoli is better. You can have collard greens. Just don't put all the fat and the grease in there. I can send recipes where you can make collard greens without meat altogether. And so with the vegetables, you want to have a bunch of different colors of vegetables in a day. So some people are getting into juicing. I'm not a fan of juicing, because the main thing you want in your intestines is fiber. So you want fiber so that it is, think of fiber as nature's broom. So fiber is going to go and physically clean out your intestines, so that the trash that Dr. Wilson was talking about, those toxins, those dead things, your body wants to get rid of that. But if you don't eat enough fiber, it cannot leave the system fast enough. You also want to eat whole grains. So white bread, I don't like to tell people just don't do it. Don't do it. Do not eat white bread. Eat whole grains so that you're getting some grains. You're getting fiber from those grains. And then, people.
Does that include my box of Jiffy corn muffin mix? I'm sorry, I digress.
That's
right.
Sugar
you like.
If you're going to make cornbread, make it from scratch. Make it from scratch. And then the easiest way to get these vegetables in and get the fruits in is have a salad. Have a salad every day. Have a salad. And then for your snacks, instead of eating chips and candy, eat fruit. And you can actually get those fruits in. And then as far as the not doing the ultra processed foods, you're not going to hear a lot of research in the United States about ultra processed foods, and that would be a whole different show. But if you look at Europe and you look at the countries that have socialized medicine, you're going to see that research, because for them, elevated risk of any disease bankrupts the whole country. So they are more in tune with keeping their folks healthy. So that would be what I would say to you. And then the other thing would be to eat fermented foods. So you said, what? I'm not talking about wine and beer. I'm talking about yogurt and kombucha. Those fermented foods will give you specific bacteria that actually increase. There's a specific acid, I'll just say what it is, butyric acid in your colon, and that helps your colon to actually maintain the lining and keep you healthier. So instead of having a soda, have some kombucha. Kombucha is bubbly too.
So, Linda, but if you have diabetes, can you really have all those fresh fruits?
You
Are they-
can, if you are cognizant of the portion size. So we're not talking big navel orange. Nope, we're talking half of a navel orange. We're talking a little apple, a little peach, a little pear.
Okay.
If you cut it up into cubes, it would be the equivalent of a half a cup. So as long as you honor the portion size, you can do it.
Ms. Turner, I gotta ask these questions.
And Dr. Wilson wanted to say something too, Dr. Kane.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Wilson. And then
Well, one thing I would also add, like everything that Linda's saying is just spot on. I wish you could just follow me around in clinic and just give all this to my patients.
She can't, right?
Right. One thing I would also add is, like, I found that when patients have like these severe cravings, sometimes they have to have that unhealthy thing around, but the healthier version. So for instance, if you know you love cornbread, just make sure when you make it, you add in a cup of flaxseed meal. So at the very least, it's going to keep you full longer. You're going to end up, you'll physically not be able to overeat it, because the amount of flaxseed meal in the baked good is swelling up in your stomach when you drink some water with it. So that's kind of a quick and dirty thing that my husband and I do. Like, we love brownies, so I'll usually make sweet potato brownies, throw in some flaxseed meal. And because of the amount of fiber in it, like one brownie is a meal, and they're each brownie maybe like 130 calories for each square, and you can't fit anything else in your body after you eat one of my brownies. So that's one thing I would add.
Let's take it to the market.
Sweet potato brownie. Wow.
We can take that to the market. That's an idea. But I want to make sure before we get offline, off air, Dr. Wilson, the newer so-called colon screening tests, various. There's a newer one. Everybody heard of Cologuard, but there are some other new ones that just came out. We need to go over, your knowledge of what those tests represents and how they fit into your total management of your patients.
Right. So I'm going to be honest here. I'm a little bit biased because I'm a proceduralist, and
So
also
am
I have seen some of these tests. Like, most of the time they're spot on, but sometimes they're used inappropriately. So for instance, a Cologuard is a great test if you are average risk. But if you have even, one first-degree relative with cancer, or you're having rectal bleeding, even if your Cologuard is negative, you cannot trust that test. So much so, I've had somebody who got a negative Cologuard who I personally scoped, I'd say about 2 months ago. He had no less than 20 large polyps. Took me a whole hour to remove, and he had a negative Cologuard 2 weeks before. We ended up doing the colonoscopy because of his family history. He'd only come to see me for acid reflux, but I said, no, you're not really the patient for this. So it's a great test if you're an average risk person, but as soon as you're no longer average risk, that you can't trust the results, which is why it's not my favorite test. And then number two, the colonoscopy is the only test that can actually go in, screen, and prevent colon cancer by removing the polyp. The Cologuard can't remove anything. So if you have a negative one today, we retest again in three years, and we hope that in that interval, nothing has developed. I would say that it's a great option if you are afraid of the colonoscopy, your average risk, and you have no symptoms whatsoever, and you're just like, let me see. But the gold standard is the colonoscopy.
Yeah, I was trying to, and I went off very quickly, and I'm having some issues. There was one other new test, and you may have said something about some other new test that came along within the last several weeks to months about they claim to have 84% predictive capability of colon cancer, blah, 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 blah. Probably falls into the same category what you described with Cologuard. But I know for me, I'm with you, the colonoscopy is essentially the gold standard. That's what we should be looking at if we want the adequate satisfaction and proof that there's nothing there to directly visualize it. If you go to get, and when a patient asks me about what's a polyp, I analogize it to, well, it's like a mole on your skin, but since you can't see it because it's in the colon, you need to look at it. There are no tests out there that go and just take and look at a mole, or run a swab across it, or whatever it may be, that tells you you have skin cancer. People directly visualize it and make that determination. And so your dermatologist for your colon is Dr. Wilson.
This has been a very interesting discussion. But just as in other weeks that we have very interesting discussions, it now has come to an end for the evening. Great discussion. Dr. Wilson, it's been a pleasure to meet you and learn from you, as well as Linda. But at the end of every show, we like to give our guests an opportunity to give their final thoughts regarding tonight's topic. Dr. Wilson, I'll start with you. What are your final thoughts regarding our topic tonight?
My final thought is colon cancer is preventable, treatable, beatable. Get screened. If any GI symptoms come up and you're not sure about it, see your gastroenterologist, discuss it. And remember, there's never a normal reason to have rectal bleeding. Blood in the stool is never normal.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Linda, what are your final thoughts regarding tonight's topic?
Well, my final thoughts are genetics. The way I look at genetics is genetics and family history is like a loaded gun, but whether or not the gun gets fired is determined by what you put in your mouth and how much you move your body. And so, if you go with someone who's never eaten vegetables in their life, and I'm saying you're going to eat 5 a day, 4 a day, and then you're going to eat some fruit, they're usually looking at me cross-eyed at that point. I like to take them where they are, and then we work on breakfast and changing make breakfast high fiber, add some fruit. And once we get that down, then we work on lunch. And then we add some high fiber, add some fruit, add some vegetables, and then we work on dinner. And so, I've had people say to me, well, my kids won't eat it. Well, there's a little secret that all of us know. If the kids can't drive, they will eat what you prepare, or they can go to bed hungry. They will eat it. They will eat it. It's hard. It's rough on the parents, but it can be done. And I think of what better gift can you give your child than giving them the gift of knowing what healthy eating is.
That's so true, Linda. And people just need to understand that. Well, I have my marching orders. I actually took notes. You can't see my screen because of this darn 4 fruits, 5 vegetables every day, eat fermented food. And Tyrone put it up on the screen because, I didn't know what you were talking about. The first thing that came to mind for me was sauerkraut, but I didn't know anything else in terms of fermented food. So we'll make sure that hopefully, Linda, you can share something with us that we can put on our website. Dr. Kane, what are your final thoughts regarding tonight's topic?
Yeah, well, there's nothing better than to give the gift of life to your kids, or prolonged life, or extended life, if you go on ahead and have them eat the proper diet. I just want to go through something real quick, making sure that people understand that this 5-year survival rate that means people with colon cancer being alive at 5 years, about 64%. However, if diagnosed early, and you can do and keep it at localized level. The 5-year survival rate is 91%, which means 91 out of 100 people will survive. If it winds up spreading to the lymph nodes or other organs, it may drop down to 72%. 72 out of 100 may survive. And then if you do not do what the primary care guy and Dr. Wilson are advocating in terms of going out trying to detect it early, your 5-year survival rate may be 14% once it spreads to the rest of the body. So that'd be 14 out of 100 people may survive. So given those statistics, there's no logical reason for a person not to go and be screened adequately, meaning colonoscopy being the gold standard, adequately for colon cancer. I rest my case.
Tonight, we talked about who's at risk of developing colon cancer. If you're looking at the screen right now, you see 4 African Americans or 4 Black people, right? And I say that because Dr. Wilson talked about her Caribbean heritage, right? So you think about it, if Black people are at risk of developing colon cancer. Now, we didn't get into 1 out of whatever, right? But that's a statistic that we will share with you. But knowing that we cannot do anything about our race, we cannot do anything about our gender, we can't do anything about our age, we can't do anything about who our parents are. But the things that we can do something about, why not take a chance on you, right? Take a chance on you. No one said it would be easy. Linda gave some easy advice to us. Start tomorrow eating 4 fruits, 5 vegetables every day. My easy nugget that I'd like to add, Linda, is because I wanted to start the day off eating both fruit and vegetable, right? Because I knew it was a struggle for me, as it still is, I admit it. But I started scrambling my eggs with spinach. I chop up spinach and I scramble my eggs with it, right? And if I really want to get fancy, I'll do an omelet and I'll put some tomatoes or salsa on it, right? So anyway, we just have to my mom likes adding mushrooms, but I digress, not me. I don't like mushrooms. But anywho, and onions, that's gross.
You anchovies. Okay, go ahead.
But my point is we have to explore. And one other colleague told me years ago, take your fresh vegetables that you like and put them in the oven and roast them. Linda, I've tried that. They're still nasty. So I need to talk to you sidebar of what I'm doing different to make them tasty. Dr. Wilson talked about her sweet potato brownies and with flaxseed meal. Now, Dr. Wilson, that doesn't sound delicious, but it sounds like your husband really enjoys them. But the point is, we have to make those small changes in our life, but only make it if you want to lower your risk of developing cancer. On a serious note, I hope that you learned something this evening. Know your family history, make those small changes in your life, and always tune in next week to Pause for the Truth. But in the meantime, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Thank you, Linda. And of course, Dr. Kane. Good evening.
Welcome to Pause for the Truth. We are grateful that you joined us today and hope you've gained valuable insights on our current topic. We look forward to having you with us next time as we explore trending issues in our community and discover ways to simplify life for you and your loved ones. Our dedicated panelists and staff are committed to sharing knowledge and serving our community. But now, we need your support. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and spread this valuable knowledge to others. Don't forget to invite your family and friends to tune in to our podcast every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. EST. Visit our website at www.pauseforthetruth.com and show your support by liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter, and linking with us on LinkedIn. Feel free to email us with any questions, or concerns, or show topic recommendations at info@pauseforthetruth.com. I would also like to give thanks to our behind-the-scenes technology engineer, Tyrone Jackson, owner and operator of Call Tyrone. Go to www